we have reached Unit 2, where we finally start doing some operations with variables, beginning with additions and subtractions. And this is one of those algebra principles that we're going to continue using all over our math life, not only in basic algebra or geometry, also when we get to calculus, trigonometry, differential equations, and even harder topics. So let's begin. In order to add or subtract with variables, we have to pay attention of a very important detail, which is they must be like terms. So, for example, in this situation, both terms have an x to the power of 1, meaning these two terms are like terms, so we can combine them. We can do the operation of the addition or the subtraction. In this case, there is an addition. So when we have like terms, all we have to do is we keep the variable, in this case, x. And then the coefficients, which in this case are 3 and positive 5, we add them together. 3 plus 5 is 8. And this is how we do addition with variables. So we keep the same variable as long as they are like terms. We keep the same variable and we add or subtract the coefficients. But let's do another example, a little bit harder because this time we have 3x's, but it's still the same process. First, we make sure they are like terms, like in this case, because they're all multiplied times x to the power of 1. So since they are like terms, we just copy the variable. We write it once. We only need to write the variable once. We don't add the variable. We don't multiply the variable. We just keep it. We copy one of the variable. We merge them into one variable. And then we add the coefficients. Now, very important to remember that this x doesn't have a coefficient of 0. When a variable doesn't have a number next to it, this variable is actually being multiplied times 1. Very important. When we do not see a coefficient in a variable, it is actually a coefficient of 1. And now we just add them together. 11 minus 7 plus 1, this is equal to 5. So the answer is 5x. And this is how we can combine like terms with more operations. Let's do it, of course, let's do it one more time. This time, well, even though the x's are to the power of 3, they all have an x to the power of 3, meaning they are all like terms. So as long as they all have the same variable with the same power, they are like terms. So if they are like terms, we can repeat the procedure. Copy the variable with the power, very important, with the power, and then add the coefficients, remembering that when a variable doesn't have a written coefficient, it is a coefficient of 1. So now that we have copied the variables, we have all the coefficients, we add them together. One more time, 11 minus 7 plus 1 equals 5. We did this operation in the previous part, and we know this is going to be 5x to the power of 3. So the difference between this one and the previous one is that now the x's are to the power of 3. So as long as we have the same terms, same like terms, meaning the same variable with the same power, we can combine like terms. What happens if we have, like in this case, radicals? Well, let's see what is actually a radical. What actually a radical is. They all have radical x, we know that. So are they like terms? Let's turn those radicals into exponents. Remember from lesson 2.5 of the course of basic algebra that we can turn fraction exponents into radical expression. We did this on the video for basic algebra lesson 2.5. So we can turn all these radical x's into x's to the power of 1/2. And we can see now they all have the same variable, which is x, raised to the same power, which is 1/2. So yes, they are like terms. And if they are like terms from the previous examples, we know that we can just copy the variable and add the coefficient. So this is going to be 5 to the x raised to the 1/2. 5 times x raised to the 1/2. One more time, we can turn fraction exponents into radicals and vice versa. So we can turn this 5x to the 1/2 into 5 radical x. And if we pay attention, is one more time the same process, because all those radical x's merged into one. So as long as we have the same variable with the same power, we have like terms, and we can combine them by copying or merging all the variables into one, and then just adding or subtracting the coefficients. But then what happens when we have different, well, in this case, same variable but different exponents? Like here, this is x to the power of 2, and this is x to the power of 1. Well, in this situation, simply they are not like terms, so we cannot combine them. There is nothing we can do. We just keep it as 11x squared minus 7x. So if they are not like terms, we do not combine them.